Congratulations! You worked hard, you built your career, you made good decisions, and somewhere along the way your income crossed $250,000. You did what everyone told you to do. You got the education, put in the hours, developed the skills, and now you are being rewarded accordingly. And the federal government would like a very enthusiastic thank you card in the form of several additional thousands of dollars every April. Here is the thing nobody tells you when you are coming up the income ladder. The rules of the tax game change when you cross certain income thresholds. Not a little. Significantly. At $250,000, you are sitting at a level where strategies that were irrelevant at $80,000 or $120,000 suddenly become genuinely important. And ignoring them is the financial equivalent of leaving a pile of legally keepable money on the table and just walking away from it. This is not about tax evasion. We're talking about tax avoidance. Distinction of the two matters enormously. Tax evasion means hiding income or lying on a return. Tax avoidance means using every legal mechanism the IRS code explicitly provides for reducing your taxable income, deliberately and intelligently. Not only is this legal, the IRS built these mechanisms in on purpose, and wealthy individuals use them without apology every single year. Today we are breaking down the main strategies, in plain English, for legally reducing what you owe when you are earning in the $250,000 and above range. Before you can reduce your tax bill, you need to understand the actual math of how you are being taxed. Because most people, even people earning $250,000, have a fundamental misunderstanding of what their tax bracket actually means. The U.S. uses a progressive tax system, which means different portions of your income are taxed at different rates, not your entire income at one flat rate. This is one of the most commonly misunderstood concepts in personal finance. Here is how it works in 2024 for a single filer. The first $11,600 of your income is taxed at 10%. Income from $11,600 to $47,150 is taxed at 12%. From $47,150 to $100,525, the rate is 22%. From $100,525 to $191,950, it is 24%. From $191,950 to $243,725, it is 32%. Above $243,725, the rate is 35%. And above $609,350, the rate is 37%. So if you earn $250,000 as a single filer, you are not paying 35% on all $250,000. You are paying 10% on the first chunk, 12% on the next chunk, 22% on the next, and so on, with only the dollars above $243,725 hitting the 35% rate. Your effective tax rate, the percentage of your total income that actually goes to federal taxes, is meaningfully lower than whatever bracket you technically sit in. In 2024, a single filer earning $250,000 pays an effective federal income tax rate of approximately 25% to 26% before any deductions or planning strategies. That is around $63,000 to $65,000 in federal income tax, before state taxes, which in high-tax states like California, New York, or New Jersey add another 8% to 13% on top. After state taxes in a high-tax state, an effective combined rate of 35% to 38% is not uncommon for someone earning $250,000. On a $250,000 income, that is $87,000 to $95,000 going to taxes. And that is before we have done a single thing to reduce it. Let's start reducing it. The single most powerful legal tax reduction tool available to most $250,000 earners is also the most straightforward. Maximize every available retirement account contribution every year without exception. Here is the core concept. When you contribute to a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA, the money you contribute comes out of your income before the IRS calculates what you owe. This is called a pre-tax contribution, and it directly reduces your taxable income dollar for dollar. In 2024, the 401k contribution limit is $23,000 per year, or $30,500 if you are 50 or older. If you contribute the full $23,000 to a traditional 401k, you reduce your taxable income by $23,000. At a 32% to 35% combined marginal rate, that single move saves you approximately $7,360 to $8,050 in taxes this year alone. Now add a spouse with their own 401k. Two fully maxed 401k at $23,000, each equals $46,000 in taxable income reduction. At a combined 35% rate, that is over $16,000 in taxes saved every single year just from fully using the accounts most employers provide. If you are self-employed, freelancer, business owner, consultant, the options are even more powerful. A SEP IRA allows contributions up to 25% of your net self-employment income, capped at $69,000 in 2024. A solo 401k allows both employee and employer contributions, with a combined limit of $69,000 as well. These accounts allow self-employed individuals to shelter amounts that are simply not available to traditional employees, and many high earners at $250,000 who are also freelancing or running a side business are dramatically underusing them. If you are enrolled in a high-deductible health plan, which many $250,000 earners are, because it is often offered by employers and frequently makes mathematical sense at this income level, you have access to one of the most tax-efficient accounts that exists anywhere in the U.S. tax code. It is called a Health Savings Account, or HSA, and it is the only account in the entire tax system that offers what financial professionals call a triple tax advantage. First, contributions are pre-tax, reducing your taxable income immediately, exactly like a 401k. Second, the money grows inside the account completely tax-free. Third, withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are also completely tax-free. In 2024, the contribution limit is $4,150 for an individual and $8,300 for a family. For a couple with a family plan, that is $8,300 of income that the IRS simply does not see, saving approximately $2,900 in federal taxes at a 35% marginal rate. The piece most people miss: you are not required to spend HSA money in the year you contribute it. Unlike a flexible spending account, HSA balances roll over forever. Many savvy high earners pay medical expenses out of pocket in current years, keeping the receipts, and let the HSA invest and compound for years or decades, then reimburse themselves from the account later, completely tax-free. The HSA essentially functions as a supplemental retirement account when used this way. After age 65, you can withdraw HSA funds for non-medical expenses with no penalty. You simply pay ordinary income tax, the same as a traditional IRA. Before 65, for medical expenses, it remains completely tax-free. Here is where the tax code gets creative in your favor, and most people earning $250,000 have never heard about this. It is the backdoor Roth IRA. A Roth IRA is a retirement account where you contribute after-tax money. It grows completely tax-free, and all withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free. The problem for high earners: the IRS phases out the ability to contribute directly to a Roth IRA above certain income levels, $161,000 for single filers and $240,000 for married couples filing jointly in 2024. If you earn $250,000, the front door to a Roth IRA is officially closed to you. But there is a back door. Literally called the backdoor Roth IRA, it is a completely legal IRS-acknowledged strategy. Here is how it works. Step 1. You contribute to a traditional IRA. There is no income limit on traditional IRA contributions, though at this income level, the contribution will not be deductible. You contribute up to $7,000 per person after-tax money. Step 2. You then convert that traditional IRA balance into a Roth IRA. You owe taxes on any pre-tax money in the traditional IRA during the conversion, but since you just contributed after-tax money, the tax owed on conversion is minimal or zero, depending on your specific situation. The result: up to $7,000 per person per year, $14,000 for a married couple, inside a Roth IRA, growing completely tax-free, withdrawable tax-free in retirement, despite your income being technically too high to contribute directly. A married couple doing backdoor Roth conversions for 20 years, contributing $14,000 annually to accounts earning 7% per year, builds approximately $573,000 in completely tax-free retirement assets. From a strategy most high earners at this income level have never been told exists. If you are already giving to charity, or planning to, there is a dramatically more tax-efficient way to do it at the $250,000 income level that most people are not using. Donating appreciated stock directly to charity instead of cash is the move almost nobody makes, and almost everybody at this income level should consider. Here is why it is significantly better than a cash donation. If you own a stock that you bought for $10,000 that is now worth $30,000, and you sell it to donate the cash, you first owe capital gains tax on the $20,000 gain at the long-term rate of 15% to 20% for your income level. That is $3,000 to $4,000 out the window before the charity sees a dollar. You then deduct the donated cash on your taxes, creating a deduction. If instead you donate the stock directly to the charity, the capital gains tax disappears entirely. The charity receives the full $30,000 in stock, sells it with no tax because charities are tax-exempt, and you receive a deduction for the full $30,000 fair market value. You kept $3,000 to $4,000 that would have otherwise gone to the IRS. The charity receives more. Everyone wins except the IRS, which, I want to be clear, is fine with this arrangement because they wrote the rule. For people who plan significant charitable contributions over multiple years, a donor-advised fund or DAF takes this further. You contribute a large lump sum of appreciated assets to the DAF in a single year, receive the full tax deduction in that year, and then recommend grants from the fund to specific charities over subsequent years at your own pace. This allows you to take a large deduction in a high-income year and distribute the charitable dollars over time. If you own a business, including a freelance operation, a consulting practice, or any self-employment income, and your business is structured as a pass-through entity which includes sole proprietorships, S-corporations, and LLC tickets taxed as pass-throughs, you may qualify for one of the most generous recent additions to the tax code. The Qualified Business Income Deduction, also called the QBI deduction or Section 199A, allows eligible business owners to deduct up to 20% of their qualifying business income from their taxable income. On $150,000 of qualifying business income, that is a $30,000 deduction, reducing taxable income by $30,000, saving approximately $9,600 to $10,500 in federal taxes at your marginal rate. The full details of QBI eligibility are genuinely complex. There are income phase-outs, business type restrictions, and W-2 wage considerations, but the core point is this. If you have any self-employment or business income alongside your salary, the QBI deduction deserves immediate attention from both you and your accountant. It is one of the few significant individual tax deductions created in the past decade, and it expires after 2025 unless Congress extends it, making the next filing cycle a particularly important window. Beyond retirement accounts and charitable strategies, the way you invest and where you hold different investments has meaningful tax consequences at the $250,000 level. Tax loss harvesting is a strategy that involves selling an investment that has declined in value to realize a loss on paper, which can be used to offset capital gains elsewhere in your portfolio, reducing the taxes you owe on investment profits. You then reinvest in a similar but not identical investment to maintain your market exposure. The IRS allows capital losses to offset capital gains dollar for dollar, and if your losses exceed your gains, up to $3,000 per year in excess losses can be deducted against ordinary income, with any remaining losses carried forward to future years. Asset location is the companion concept, placing different types of investments in the most tax-efficient accounts for each type. Broadly speaking, high-growth stocks belong in Roth accounts where their appreciation escapes taxes entirely. Tax-inefficient investments, like bonds that generate regular taxable interest or actively managed funds that generate frequent capital gains distributions, belong in tax-deferred accounts like traditional IRA or 401k. Low-turnover, tax-efficient investments like broad index funds belong in taxable brokerage accounts. This reordering of the same underlying investments across different account types can add the equivalent of 0.5% to 1% in after-tax returns annually, which compounded over decades is a substantial amount of money. Municipal bonds, bonds issued by state and local governments, are worth considering at the $250,000 income level specifically. Interest income from municipal bonds is generally exempt from federal taxes, and often from state taxes if you live in the issuing state. At a 35% combined marginal rate, a municipal bond yielding 4% is equivalent to a taxable bond yielding approximately 6.15% on an after-tax basis. The higher your marginal rate, the more advantageous the tax exemption on munis becomes. Let's pull this together. You crossed $250,000. That is a real achievement. The government's reaction to that achievement is to take a larger percentage of it, which is a feature of the system, not a surprise. The question is not whether you owe more taxes at this level, because you do. The question is whether you are using every legal mechanism the tax code explicitly provides to reduce what you owe, or whether you are simply accepting the default bill without ever checking whether there was a lower number available. Here is the summary of what we covered. Max out your 401k and any employer plan, $23,000 per year, or $30,500 if you are 50 or older, reducing taxable income immediately. If you are self-employed, SEP IRA and solo 401k offer shelter up to $69,000. Use the HSA if a high-deductible health plan is available, triple tax advantage, and it compounds if you do not spend it. Do the backdoor Roth conversion, $14,000 per year for a married couple into tax-free growth, legally available despite your income. Donate appreciated stock rather than cash to charity. The capital gains disappear and the deduction stays. Explore the QBI deduction if you have any business income before it potentially expires. Locate your assets in the right accounts, harvest losses strategically, and consider municipal bonds once your marginal rate makes the math work. None of this is exotic. None of it is a loophole. Every one of these strategies exists in the tax code explicitly, has been there for years, and is used openly by people who took the time to understand what they were actually entitled to keep. The difference between a $250,000 earner who uses all of these and one who does not is not luck, not income, and not accounting genius. It is simply the decision to stop paying more than the minimum legally required. That decision starts today. If you found this helpful, please hit like and subscribe and share with others who could benefit from this. See you in the next video.